I'm Sarah Lovecraft, and I'm here with you guys with finishing techniques today. You guys, I got a lot of things to show you. We're going to talk about different ways to finish your jewelry. But before we get into all of that, I do want to go ahead and run through all of the important things that you need to know before we get started, right? Lots of housekeeping to do here. Hi, Mary, how are you? It's so good to see you. So guys, first and foremost, I want to let you know that at any point during the show today, you can hit the shopping cart button at the bottom of your screen, and it is going to bring up all of the items in the show. Now, that being said, today's show's got a lot of things in it. So I'm going to be going through a lot of items, and that doesn't even scratch the surface of what is possible, plus what is available over on artbeads.com. So just keep all of that in mind. We've got a lot of things to talk about, but there's even more available over on the website. So you want to be sure that you're subscribed to the artbeads.com newsletter and that you're checking that artbeads.com website on a regular basis, because you want to be sure that you're not missing anything, right? Specials and deals and sales and all of those wonderful little fun things that we like to use to our shopping advantage, right, are going to come through that newsletter, and they're also going to be posted on the website. You don't want to miss any of those things. You don't want to miss any of those things, because that artbeads.com website is going to be your main resource. We want to make that your one-stop shop for everything that you need for jewelry making. So just go ahead and get in the habit, right? Get in the habit. Sign up for the newsletter. Familiarize yourself with the website, but hit that shopping cart during today's show to see all of the things that are in today's show. And then maybe you might find your way over on the website too. You never know. You never know, right? At least I hope you find your way over there. All right. So at any point, like I mentioned, you can hit that shopping cart. You can also put items into your cart, and you can check out all while still watching the show. It's just going to make me smaller. You can handle all of your business while you are still watching. You don't have to miss anything. When you're finished, you can click on me and it will make me big again. So you don't have to miss a beat. However, there are times when you do have to miss things, right? Life happens. Cat knocks something over. Who knows what's going on? You might have to walk away from the screen for a few minutes, and that's okay, right? You can always come back and watch this as a video on demand, and it is super easy to find. You go to the Artbeads website, type in live, or click the live button. It's usually in red, I believe. Pretty sure it's in red. Click on that and it's going to bring up, if there happens to be a live going on at the moment, you're going to be able to see that, as well as being able to have access to all of the previous shows. So you can see me, you can see Tammy, you can see Becky, and you can see Julie. You can see all of the previous shows that we've done and be re-inspired, which is particularly helpful for when you order your items, right? Might take a couple of days for them to make it to your doorstep, but when they do, if you've forgotten what it was that you were going to do, you can come right back to that live and re-watch and be re-inspired and make along. You can also fast forward, which makes it kind of nice because you can get through all this part already. Go straight to the project. Straight to the project. Oh my goodness. So what else do I need to tell you guys? I think that wraps it up, except for all of the love, right? Can never have too much love. Hit those heart buttons at any point during the show when you see something that you love. Whether you are just enjoying yourself and having a good time, or you love a product, or you love a technique, hit those heart buttons. Lets me know that you are out there and that you are enjoying what I am doing for you. Definitely want to hit those hearts. And if you want to share the love even more, please feel free to share this anywhere you are able to do so. So if you're part of a Facebook group that allows you to share these kinds of videos, or if you just want to share this on your own social media feed, we really, really appreciate it. It helps to put our virtual feelers out there to reach all of the makers that don't know about us yet. We have an amazing community here already, and we just want to keep growing stronger and bigger. The more, the merrier. So getting word out virtually is the number1 way to do that, and it is the most important and best way that you can help support me and all of the other designers here at artbeads.com. So, all right, let's take a look. Who's here today? Ginger's here, Wendy's here, Kim's here, Gina's here, Pam is here. So many familiar faces, guys. We want to bring in some unfamiliar faces. I love it when I see people in the comment section that I've never seen before. That's super exciting. Not that I don't love you guys that are always here. Listen, your support means absolutely everything to me. So don't go away. Don't go away. I'm so happy that you're here. I just want our family to grow. I really do. And you are the #1 way to help make that happen. So appreciate anywhere you can share all of the things here, and Happy New Year to all of you. This is my first show back for the new year. This is the first Friday here in the new year, and I'm looking forward onwards and upwards. I got to tell you, I think 2024 is going to be a great year here at Art Beads, and I'm glad that you are on the front end, right? You're on the front end of that. It's January. We've got a long way to go. So buckle up, Buttercup. We got a lot of fun designs to make. So let's talk about what's in the show today. Done all the housekeeping. Now it's time to get into it. I want to talk about finishing techniques today. And when I was putting the items together for this show, it was really kind of hard to narrow this down because quite honestly, there are a ton of ways to finish your jewelry, which oddly enough is the number one question outside of the number two question. Is right next to the number, like they're head to head. The number one question that gets asked to makers is, how do you finish this piece? Because sometimes you find yourself in a situation where you've made the entire piece of jewelry and you are now stuck. You have no idea what to do. And let me tell you where this happens in particular, just so that you know you're not alone when you are faced with this question. TikTok is a great resource for quick little bites of jewelry, right? As well as YouTube and here. But sometimes what happens is when we get in this, mode of like bite-sized bites of designs, some of the most important parts get left out. How do you finish it? You just watch somebody for 3 minutes make an amazing piece of jewelry, but you didn't see how they finished it. Well, I'm going to help to answer and demystify some of those questions for you. That being said, I've whittled this down to the number one technique that gets asked about, that kind of is that head to head with that other question. And some top ways to finish off some leather designs as well. But let me be very, very clear about the show today. This is only, do you see my backdrop moving? There's a cat back there. I'm so sorry. I'm going to hold on to this for just a second. If it can happen during a live, it will. She's a sneaky one. I thought she was out of here. If you, I lost my train of thought. Oh, if you look at all of the different ways to finish jewelry, there's more than we can talk about in one show. I mean, just being honest with you. So we're just going to scratch the surface here. I'm going to give you some of the top most needed techniques. And then as far as the rest of them are concerned, it may be that maybe we'll revisit this in the future because there are so many other ways to finish jewelry. And we want to be sure that we are trying to cover all of those bases. I'm going to give you the number one today for bead stringy wire, a couple for leather, and then we may discuss a couple others, but let's get right into it before this backdrop falls down. Oh my goodness. If it happened during a live, it will. It will. And I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. Just keeping it real. Just keeping it real. All right, guys. Somebody's talking about snow in the comments. Oh my goodness. Gina says, if you get snow, send it my way. Send it my way. I would love to have some snow. I really, really would. All right. So I'm going to bring out, and it fell. I'm going to bring out a couple of tools that we're going to talk about for finishing today. And before I really get down into all of this, I do want to mention that in today's show, there are a couple of bead mixes. Guys, these designer blends, this is your last chance. Now, I don't physically have these in my hand at the moment, but like I said, hit that shopping cart at the bottom of your screen. It's going to bring those up. The limited edition designer blends, there is only a handful of these left, and I wanted to be sure that I included these in the show today. Even though I don't physically have them in front of me, I don't want to miss the opportunity to share those with you because I don't want you to miss the opportunity. There's only a handful of these left. Now, if you'll remember, these bead mixes are the ones, the set is falling down around me as we speak. These are the ones that Julie and Becky and I went to the undisclosed location in the upper northwest of the country and put together these amazing bead blends for you guys. And you've seen a lot of these. We've had them. Becky's had them. Julie's had them. I've had some of them in my shows as well. And they are very, very limited edition, meaning that once they're gone for good. There's only a handful of the 3 that are in today's show left. And I want to be sure that you don't miss the opportunity for these. So let me tell you, I know you're not really looking at anything other than these tools, and I apologize for that. But we've got the Ancient Egyptian Cartouche Designer Blend. Guys, these are so pretty. This one is a, it's got intricate patterns and lots of colors. This one is like the black, and it's got some metallic blues to it. This is like, if you like Egyptian stuff, but you like a little bit of fancy sparkle, that's going to be a really good one. That's going to be a great choice for you. There's round beads, oval beads, and cubes in that one. The other one is the Egyptian Turquoise Designer Blend. It's the Ancient Egyptian Turquoise. This one is more of like the Nile inspired. It's got the turquoise blues, and it has like this gorgeous goddess gold in it that is just amazing. Like, you don't want to miss out on those. The Woodland Designer Blend, it's got greens and orange. It's a nature inspired color palette. And then of course the Santa's Little Helper, and there's only a couple of those left. It's never too early to get a jump start on next Christmas. I know it's just January 5th, but guys, really, those are going to sell out and they're going to be gone. So I just wanted to take the opportunity before we got any further to let you know that those are available and you can grab those, because once they're gone for good. All right, let's talk about what's in front of me, shall we? Guys, these are crimper tools, and at first glance, they may all look exactly the same, but they are 100% different. Each one of these has its own special skill set. And crimping is not the only thing that these are good for, and that's why I say that. Now, let's start with the standard here. Our standard crimper tool, this is going to be your go-to tool for your crimping, and we're going to talk about crimping. We're going to do like a breakdown, Crimping 101 today, because that's going to be the #1 way to finish your bead stringing pieces. Okay, if you're using bead stringing wire, crimping is the way to do this, but it's not one of those things that you enter into lightly. It is a full-on technique. It is a skill. You got to learn it. You got to learn it the correct way for your jewelry to last forever. So this is 100% a must-have tool. If you don't have one of these on your desk and you are crimping with a pair of pliers and you're flattening it, this show is for you, okay? The Mighty Crimper tool is the cousin of our standard crimper tool. This one is also in the show. This one is for your larger crimp beads, but this is also a fantastic tool for putting on crimp covers, another skill we're going to be talking about today. And then last but not least, we have the Micro Crimper. This one is going to be for your very tiny, look at the notches on this one. Teeny tiny crimps. Teeny tiny crimps need love too. So we've got tools for all three of those things, okay? And we're going to talk about where and why you would want to switch these out and why it's important that you consider having all three, not just the standard, okay? So why is this all relevant? Because the #1 finishing technique, like I mentioned before, is crimping. And that is also the #1 thing outside of how do I finish this? The next question is, how do I crimp, right? How do I crimp? How do I crimp, and how do I crimp correctly? And that is a very, very important question that's got a great answer, but it's more than just the tool and the technique. This is also going to need the correct findings as well. So we're also talking crimps and wire guardians, and I'm going to explain to you why both of these things are pretty darn important when it comes to the life of your jewelry. We're going to finish off some beading wire. We're going to break this down. We're going to do it step by step, and we're going to talk about why the wire guardian is necessary, when the wire guardian can be left out, what you should be doing with your crimp beads, all of those things, okay? So if you are ready, let's get started with this, because this is a really important lesson. All right, for starters, these crimp beads and the crimping pliers need some bead stringing wire, right? You gotta have bead stringing wire to put your beads on. And for those of you who may not know the difference between this and say your Fireline or your Wildfire, there is a big difference here. So excuse the hole in mine. This is how I have it attached so that I can easily get to it. Just stick a dowel rod, right? But bead stringing wire is probably the first step in your jewelry design, right? And this step is a really important step because like your crimps, like your pliers, this is one of the 3 things that's going to make or break your jewelry. You want to be sure that you're choosing the correct kind of bead stringing wire. So if you're going to be stringing up your favorite gemstones, your favorite check glass beads, you want to be sure you're making the right choice and that this choice works in combination with your findings. It's not one size fits all. And I think beginners get a little bit confused about that because they think, okay, well, I'm going to buy I'm going to buy the cheapest of the beading wire and then whichever findings are the most popular. It doesn't really work that way, right? It doesn't really work that way. Now, I'm not going to get too much into the differences between the 49, the 19, and the 7 strand. That is most definitely information for a different show. But what I do want to say is that what makes your bead stringing wire a little bit different than your wildfire and things like that is that you don't use this with a needle. That's why you need these findings here on the end. You use these just for your stringing projects. And I say just, that's not necessarily true. You can actually knot with quite a bit of your bead stringing wire, but this is nylon coated 49 strands. It even shows you a little picture right here. You can see these tiny, tiny strands. There's 49 of those. Those are all twisted together and then they are coated in this really nice nylon coating that holds all 49 strands together. Now, why is this important? It's important because the findings that you're going to be using with this are going to help to maintain the integrity of that nylon coating that is holding this wire together. So you most definitely need to know all of those things, right? You may be asking yourself, why? Why do I care? I'm going to show you why you care. Because if you will follow these steps and do this process the way that I show it to you, you are absolutely going to have a piece of jewelry that's going to last you a lifetime, okay? I'm also going to show you some mistakes that you might be making and help you to avoid those. Now, something about your bead stringing wire, and I've got 2 out here. I've got some bright 49 strand. I've also got some gold colored 49 strand here. Both of these are available in the shop. I just want to show you both available on the website. Just want to show you what the bright looks like. This is a nice gray that's going to kind of disappear, and then you've got this beautiful gold. So depending on what your findings are, you may want your beading wire to match your findings. Totally up to you. There are a ton of bead stringing wire choices on artbeads.com. I've just got 2 pulled here for you. I could do an entire show just on beading wire. But like I said, I just want to try to keep this as simple as possible. But you may see, depending on what kind of beading wire you buy, this one in particular, this one's by Beading. It's got the information for you on the back, which makes things a little bit easier for shopping. Now, if you're a beginner, you may not understand any of this. I'm going to break this down for you. So this wire is a 0.24 inch or a 0.61 millimeter. That's the diameter of this wire. Now, why does that matter? It matters because you want to be sure that you're choosing the correct findings to fit this diameter wire. Like I said, one size does not fit all. And so the information is back here on the back for you. It'll show you if this is your millimeter wire, this is going to be the findings that are going to work for you and the sizes. And the sizes here are really just kind of a guide because crimps come in a lot of different measurements. But it's a really good rule of thumb that 1 means 1 millimeter. This 2 means 2 millimeter. When you see a 3, that means 3 millimeter. So it can be kind of confusing, but you want to be sure that more than anything, you want to be sure that your diameter wire meets the correct size of your crimp. You can't just stick any crimp on here and expect it to work. If you've got a beading wire that is going to need a number 3 or a 3 millimeter crimp, don't put a 4 millimeter crimp on it and expect it to hold, right? That crimp's going to be a little bit too big. It's going to slip and it's going to come undone. So it's really important that when you're shopping, you're paying attention to all those measurements. So I know that can be overwhelming, but it's really important information that is going to make or break your jewelry. So that's the first step in making sure that your finishing techniques are going to last, right? So now let's talk about the actual technique of the finishing altogether. We're going to actually cut a piece here and I'm going to walk you through this crimping process. And what we want, once we've decided whether or not our crimp tubes, whether they are gold or silver or whatever color you want, are going to be the right diameter, and that we've also chosen a wire guardian that is also in the correct diameter. Now, what makes this easier for you is that on the Art Beads website, you're going to be able to see all of the specs. You can even see those specs right now. If you'll click on that shopping cart, you're going to pull up the wire guardians. It's going to give you some information. You're probably going to see the hole size there. You're going to see the hole size for the crimps as well. And then you're also going to see the diameter of the wire. So the information is there. You just kind of have to look, but the Art Beads website does a really good job of making sure that all of those measurements are available to you to try to make it as easy as possible so that you don't feel overwhelmed. Okay, so we're going to take some of our wire here and we are going to take a crimp. Now, unfortunately, I could only find one silver crimp. I got a ton of the gold ones. But I have misplaced all of my silver and I have a wire guardian. So the second time we do this, we can do this with the gold. So we can say we did both. All right. So you've strung on all of your beautiful beads, right? You're ready to finish this design, or maybe you haven't started at all and you are getting ready to string your beads. The process is going to be pretty much the exact same thing. We're going to thread on our crimp to the end of our beading wire. And then we're going to thread on our wire guardian. Now, wire guardians come in a lot of different colors and sizes and descriptions. This is what I had to giggle. Eric sent me the other day, was like, you need to add cable thimbles to your show. And I was like, what in the world is a cable thimble? What is this? What is this? I have no idea what you're talking about. Well, come to find out, he wasn't just making things up. He was not. He was being straightforward. Wire thimble, cable thimble, those are other words for wire guardian or wire guard. So when you're shopping for these, any of those descriptions are going to get you what I call a wire guardian. So I learned something new. And it's funny because Eric's not even a maker, but listen. You take your wire through your cable thimble, which I don't know. It tickles me every time I say it. You take your wire up through. Now let me take this back out again so we can really look at this. You're going to take your wire up through the wire guardian. So it's got a hole very similar to a bead, right? That hole, this is where that measurement comes into play. You want to be sure that that measurement of the opening of your hole of your wire guardian is going to be the correct size for the diameter of your wire. Okay, so it's going up through the hole. Then you're going to notice there is a channel. It's like a dip where that bead stringing wire is going to sit right inside that little channel, right? That little groove. And then you're going to take that beading wire back down through the wire guardian. And then when you pull out the slack, like I mentioned, that bead stringing wire sits right in that little groove, right? Now, why does this matter? Some of you are like, I've never seen this before. I don't understand. What is the point? Can I skip this? Well, here's the answer to that question. Number one, yes, you can skip this. That's why bead string and wire is designed the way that it is. It has this beautiful nylon coating that not only gives it a nice luster, but it also protects all of those tiny wires that are twisted together. It is durable. It really is durable. It's going to last a long time. But if you use a wire guardian, it's going to last even longer. We're talking about making pieces here that are going to last a lifetime. And in order to do that, some of the steps, some of the extra findings are necessary. This is what's going to set you apart in your craft booth from the guy next to you. This is what's going to set you apart on your website from the guy next to you. Using this guardian, it does exactly what a guardian does. It protects the wire. It protects the integrity of that nylon coating, right? It is a barrier. I don't know why they don't call it that. Thimble, I don't get. I mean, I guess I do. But barrier would have made a little bit more sense. This is a cable barrier. I don't know. But it creates a barrier between your bead stringing wire and whatever finding you're going to attach to this. Whether it is a jump ring, or you're going to string your clasp directly to this, or you're going to hang a dangle from this. whatever the case may be, whatever comes next, for us it's going to be a jump ring, but for whatever comes next, it creates this barrier between that thing and your bead stringing wire to protect it even further than that nylon coating, because whatever hits this wire causes abrasion, and right in the moment that doesn't make any difference, right? Okay, great, I've got the nylon coating it's gonna protect it from the abrasion, but over time, right? Over time, the more you wear this, the more that metal rubs up against that nylon coating, and the more that starts to break down, and that bead stringing wire is going to start to fray. Those 49 strands, 19 strands, or 7 strands are going to start to split apart, right? And then you're going to have a break in your piece of jewelry. This little guardian right here is going to keep that from happening. And may not be a necessary step to everybody, but if you're making a piece of jewelry that you really want to last longer than your average piece, say you're stringing your very favorite, limited edition check glass designer blend onto this beading wire, you don't want that necklace to break on you. You don't. You want the life of this to last. And so that wire guardian is going to help to ensure that that nylon coating is going to remain intact. So once you've taken your wire up through that wire guardian, the next step is to take it back down through your crimp. Now this is where the second important step to crimping happens, right? This is probably the most important, even more important than your wire guardian, because quite honestly, you can skip the wire guardian, but you can't skip the next part. This part, you want to be sure that your beading wire is running parallel inside. Parallel inside that crimp bead, running side by side, not crisscrossing, which is kind of frustrating because your wire is naturally going to want to do this, because you're going up through that kind of horseshoe shape of your wire guardian, and then it's naturally going to want to kind of crisscross like this. You can even see how this wire is running through and it wants to hop over there to the left side. You don't want to do that. You want to be sure that they are running parallel inside there and they're not touching. That's why not only is the wire guardian important, but the size of your crimp is really important, not just for the diameter of the bead, but you've got to have enough room in there so that those wires are not touching each other, right? But not too much room, because there's a fine line there. Being sure the wires are running parallel, they're not touching when I separate them out. Now, I'm going to come in with my standard crimper tool because I'm using a standard size crimp. Guys, if you're interested in stocking up on these crimps, they're in the show. You can grab a bunch of these. You go through these like crazy. So this is going to be a really good show for stocking up on these. Grab as many of these as you can, because this is one of those highly consumable products that you are going to use on a regular basis if you're going to be doing a lot of jewelry making. Now, your crimper tool has 2 notches. It's got the one in the back that's closest to the handle. It looks like a mouth or a little macaroni noodle. And then you've got the one in the front that's kind of oval shaped. You're going to take this crimp and you're going to place that into the back notch of your crimper tool. And when you squeeze, and you can see that in real time, that tooth, right, that comes down and further separates those wires out in that crimp. So you can see they're not touching at all. And what has happened is the tooth here has brought the metal of the crimp down between there to further separate them out. Now you've kind of turned this single tube into 2 tubes that are running side by side, but not touching. Now, why does that matter? Again, because you don't want them touching each other and over time causing abrasion, right? So that separates those out. You can clearly see when you look at your crimp that those wires are separated. Okay. Now you're going to place this into the front notch of your crimper tool sideways, and then you're going to squeeze. That is going to tidy up your crimp, right? It's going to make it a little bit smaller, and it's also going to help to tighten that up. Then you're going to give this the tug test. And this is super important. Always do the tug test. Don't string your beads on yet. Right? Do the tug test. make sure that it's tight, because if you haven't crimped properly, or if your findings don't match, if your crimp tube is too big, it's going to slip and slide on you, and you're going to know that you're going to need to change it out before you spend all the time stringing your piece of jewelry, right? Then you're going to come in with a cutter of some variety, and you're going to trim off the excess, and you can either be done or you can move on and cover your crimp with a crimp cover. We're going to talk about those here in just a second, right? But now you're ready to go. If you crimp correctly, you'll notice that I went ahead and cut that off. I cut that bead string and wire off. I didn't leave any behind. I didn't take any of it down through 3 or 4 beads. I didn't restring the entire necklace, right? For one thing, I don't have any beads. But imagine, I didn't take this through my imaginary designer blend. I did not take this through my ancient Egyptian turquoise designer blend, because it's not necessary. If you have crimped properly, you don't have to worry about that. You don't. You're going to know that you've crimped correctly by following those steps. You don't need any extra security, and you don't need to worry about wasting more materials, right? Okay, so this brings me to my next finding here. I'm going to bring these out. These are crimp covers. And the crimp covers, also one of those things where you have to be sure you have the correct measurement. Now, before we get into that, I want to stop right here for just a second, because there are some of you who have been with me for years. Number 1, I love you. Thank you. Number 2, you know how I feel about crimp covers. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that, and I'm going to tell you why it is that I've included these in the show. Because some of you are scratching your head right now going, wait a minute, she's not a crimp cover person. All right, first of all, crimp covers for me, like I said, I'm not a fan. And you may be wondering, okay, well then why? There's a reason why I'm not a fan, and it's a legitimate reason. I, for one, think that the crimp is small. It's unobtrusive. It doesn't detract from the design. So it doesn't bother me, right? It doesn't bother me. Some people can't stand them. They say, oh, it looks unfinished. It looks unprofessional. You need to cover it with a crimp cover. And I am all for that as well. What I am not a fan of is when you pick the wrong size crimp cover to go over your crimp. And then what happens is you have this extra abrasion, and you are just, it's like you're voiding out all of this hard work that you've done to protect your beading wire. If you pick a crimp cover that is the wrong size, particularly if it is too big, if you pick a crimp cover that is too big to go over your crimp, you are creating a bead that's going to spin. And it's not just any bead, it's a metal bead that's got an edge on it. And that edge, even though it's nice and rounded, is still going to cause abrasion. That bead is all it's going to do is just spin around and around and around on that wire. And over time, guess what happens? It wears down that nylon coating, and then your beading wire starts to fray. That's the reason I'm not big on crimp covers, and it's not because they are ugly or anything like that. It's just because 9 times out of 10 people pick the wrong size, and most of the time it's because they pick the wrong as far as the big, right? Because it's really hard to get a crimp cover on that's too small. You'll pretty much know if it's not going to fit, but if it's too big, that is an entirely different issue. So here's a general rule of thumb. When you are shopping for all of these things, your wire guardians, your wire, your crimps, and your crimp covers, a good rule of thumb for selecting the correct size of crimp cover is it's going to be 1 millimeter bigger than your crimp. So if you're using a 2 millimeter crimp, you're going to need a 3 millimeter crimp cover. If you're using a 3 millimeter crimp, you're going to need a 4 millimeter crimp cover. So I don't know where that information hides, but I promise that is the case. So please be sure that you take note of that, right? I have picked out for the show all of the things that work together. So I've kind of taken the hard part of this out for you. I've picked some of the most common diameters of beading wire in the gold and the brights. I've picked out the most common sizes of crimp beads. And I've picked out the correct size of crimp covers for them. So if you want to just one-stop shop all of it, and the wire guardians too, everything in the show works together. But if you need a different color, or you want a crimp cover that's like sparkly, or you want one that's corrugated, Those are all on the Art Beads website. Please feel free to shop on all of those as well, but just remember the measurements that I'm giving you here, okay? All right, so you're gonna take your crimp cover, you're gonna place it over your crimp, and now the question becomes, how do I close this? Well, you can use your pliers, or you can grab that mighty crimper tool. And the mighty crimper tool, if I could keep this on here, I'm telling you, the set fell apart today. And now I have butterfingers. It's all right. It's all good. You're going to grab this mighty crimper tool. So the mighty crimper tool, just like the standard, has the 2 notches, the one in the back, the one in the front. This is built for your bigger crimps, right? This is going to be your 3mm, your 4mm, your 5mm, your larger crimps, whether you are using really thick diameter stringing materials or you're using several stringing materials through one crimp. Your mighty crimper is going to be the way to go. You're not going to get a secure crimp on a large crimp bead with your standard crimper tool. So just keep that in mind. But this guy does double duty. Not only is he good for those larger crimps, but he's perfect for closing your crimp covers without marking up your wire, or without marking up the metal, rather. So I use that front notch of my mighty crimper tool, and I place my crimp cover in there and just give it a squeeze. Well, I'm trying to be gentle. I give it a squeeze, and then I kind of readjust a little bit. Give it a squeeze, squeeze it a little more. This is going to close that crimp cover over your crimp really nicely. And if it fits and it is closed correctly, it's not going to spin around on your wire either, which is exactly what you want. You want it to fit properly, close without being all marked up and mashed flat with your pliers. And now you're ready to move on. Now, I know this seems like a lot of steps. It seems like a lot of steps. It seems like it would be a whole lot easier to take one of those crimp beads, put it on the end of the wire, make a loop, and then smash that crimp flat with your pliers. Yep. And you 100% can do that. You can do that. But what happens if we do that exactly? I'll show you. Let me show you. I'm going to thread that crimp. Okay, I'm going to loop around. I'm going to take this right back down through. No wire guardian. I'm going to let those wires just crisscross and do whatever they want to do. And then I'm going to take my pliers and I'm just going to smash that flat. Boom. Guess what? That is tight. It's not going anywhere. That makes you feel like you've got the most secure piece of jewelry in the entire world. But you don't. In reality, what you've done is now you've created this really sharp edge that is now crushing your wire. Those 2 wires are crushing each other inside the crimp. So they're smashing up against each other. And now the metal is smashing up against it as well. And right this second, that might be secure. But in 6 months, if you wear this every day, it's not. Your break is going to happen on either side of this. And you're going to lose every single thing that you have worked so hard to put together. That's why this is important, right? The wire guardian, I can see if you want to leave that part out. That's fine. That's totally up to you. Will it protect your jewelry even further? It will. And I hope that you will make the change into, using wire guardians if you're not. But the number one thing I hope that you change is if you have been doing this, that now you will do this. Please crimp correctly, because it's going to save you so much money in the long run when it comes to buying beading wire. Instead of having to restring and fix all of your broken pieces, you're going to do it one time, you're going to do it right, and you're going to be able to wear it forever, right? Okay, wow, I could go on and on. I really could. Bead stringing wire and this finishing technique, that's a big deal to me. That's a big deal to me because this is the number one thing that causes people the most stress is crimping. And let me tell you something, it takes practice. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I get it perfect every single time. Because listen, I don't. I'm going to use gold on this bright wire. I apologize. But I don't get it right every single time. That's why that tug test is so important. So let's do it one more time, then we're going to move on. Okay. I'm going to take this crimp, thread it on, thread on, excuse me, my wire guardian, up, back down through, and then back down through that crimp. Pull out all the slack, making sure those wires are not crisscrossing inside there. Okay. Now, some people ask, do you crimp the wire guardian? Nope. Do not crimp your wire guardian. But if you want to, you can pinch it and close it a little bit tighter if you want to. You know, some of them will get opened up kind of wide. You can close them a little bit by squeezing them, but you don't need to do anything other than that. And you don't even have to do that part if you don't want to. Okay. Then you're going to bring in your crimper tool. You can place that into the back notch. Give that a squeeze. You're going to turn it sideways and put it into the front notch and give that a squeeze. Okay. You're going to come in with your cutter tool, cut off whatever's left over, and then you're going to bring in your crimp cover and you're going to use your mighty crimper tool to close that. Now, where does the micro crimper come into play? So I don't actually have anything for the micro crimper today, but I do want to mention that it is in the show, and it is just as important because as I talk, I cannot seem to talk and work at the same time today. It is just as important because if you're using a micro-sized crimp, I'm talking your 1 millimeter or smaller, and believe me, they do come smaller than that. A standard crimper tool, you may get a crimp with your standard crimper tool, but what happens is that when you go in for that second step, you're not going to get it closed down tight enough, and your piece is going to come apart. So if you're going to be using some really fine bead stringing wire and you need those little teeny tiny microscopic crimps, you're going to need your micro crimper tool as well. Look at how tiny. Do you see how tiny those little notches are? That little macaroni shape and that little oval shape? Yep, those are specifically designed for 1 millimeter crimps or smaller. And there are times where you're going to be stringing your gemstones and they have the tiniest drill hole ever. So you're going to find some of that super fine beading wire. It's really, really tiny. Your standard crimps are just not going to work. You're going to need the tiny, and you're going to need the micro crimper. I need a do-over today. Can we get a do-over? All right. Let's move on because I could talk this to death and I don't want to. I want to give you at least one more little thing, a little tip, trick, little information, product, if you will, for your finishing techniques. Now, again, I mentioned there is a ton of different finishing techniques depending on what your materials are. And leather happens to be one of my favorites. There are a ton of ways to finish off your leather pieces of jewelry. This is just a couple. Okay, this is just a couple. Now, Art Beads has got a ton of leather to choose from the tiniest. You can see this little 1 millimeter. Actually, I think this might be a 0.5 millimeter. It's either, wait, I think it's 1. And this one is 1.5. I'm pretty sure. I always get them all mixed up. I know this is pretty small, but if you're looking to shop for leather, this is definitely going to be a great place to do it because not only can you get a wide selection of colors and diameters of leather, but you also have a ton of choices when it comes to finishing off your designs. Now, like I said, this is just a couple of a ton of options for you on the website. So I'm just going to show you just a few. These are pretty easy to use, but by no means the only things that are available to you. So one of my favorites is very similar to the crimps that we just did. And that is this little cord end that you actually are going to flatten this middle part. So again, measurements are going to be really important. You want to be sure that you are buying the correct measurement for the correct size of material that you're using. So I'm using this leather and I have picked out the correct size of the crimp cap. I can't remember what these are called. It's in the shopping bag. You're going to slide this guy And like I said, all of the things that are in the show go with each other. So if you don't want to deal with looking at the measurements, you definitely can just stick with what's in the show today. But you're going to slide your leather into that. And I can see those little teeny tiny openings? I can see that the leather is in there all the way. And I'm actually going to take a pair of pliers here and place that right in that middle section. And this is the one time where squeezing something flat is acceptable. You're actually just going to pinch down on that. Give it the tug test. And you just finished your end. It's done. It's got a loop on it. You're going to be able to add your jump ring, add your clasp, whatever you want to this, right? Easy peasy. Like, if you must squish something flat with your pliers, let it be this guy. Now, what else can we squeeze flat with our pliers? Let's use some of these foldovers, okay? There are these foldovers as well. Now, I've got a little bit thicker leather here, and let's say I've got a multi-strand design just for fun. We're going to cut a little bit of this. We're going to take two ends together. Maybe I just want a single end, right? You can use these fold over ends. The fold over ends come in a couple of different colors. You can get these in the gold. You can get these in the silver. These are fantastic for multi-strand leather. They're also good for ribbon. They're good for textiles. Anything where you need to pinch the ends over. It's got a loop on the end of it as well, which is really handy. But I like it for, just like I said, if I've got a multi-strand design here where I've got more than one end of leather and I don't quite know what to do with all of it, this is a really good way to handle all of this. So I can lay 3 strands of 1 millimeter leather or 1.5 millimeter leather in there, and then I can add a little bit of glue if you want to. You don't have to. If you close this down, think you've got a good closure on it, that's great. A little bit of glue, and then you're just going to fold the ends over. Now, this can be a little tricky if you've not done these before. They always kind of, for me, I think it's a little bit easier to start to bend the edges over beforehand. So you see how I'm just kind of bending them over. Just getting it started before I actually lay the leather in there. Just because sometimes, you know, you only have 2 hands. Right, so I've kind of started the process. And then I'm going to just lay these guys in there. And I'm going to finish that off. We'll go with 2. No, all 3. The 3 will fit. I just kind of closed it down a little too tight. I got a little excited closing this one up. Oh my goodness. All right. Is it 5 o'clock yet? I'm not trying to get away from you guys. That's not necessarily what I meant. I just meant, you know, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. All right, gonna squeeze that down. See how I just used my pliers there to squeeze that down, and then you're just gonna do the same thing on the other side, and you're just gonna flatten this down. Now, again, you don't have to use any glue if you don't want to, but squeeze that nice and flat. And you've got a really secure end for a single wide piece if you're using like flat wide leather, or you've got, you know, 2 or 3 strands of leather that you're using, 4 or 5 strands of cotton cord, whatever's going to fit in there. All you have to do is just fold these over. Glue, no glue, totally up to you, but you can grab these in the silver and in the gold. It's nice for finishing off multi-strand designs. I do like it for like suede lace because I can usually fit like the wide suede lace or the wide flat leather in there, and it's really good for those as well because you don't have to worry that you're squishing a round piece and making it flat. But it's great for these multi-strands. Now, if you have a single strand and let's say you don't particularly care for these, or maybe you just like this better, this is more of a single strand closure here. They also come in the gold or the silver, and you can see it's a little bit larger than my stringing material, which is fine. I could fit 2 strands in there if I wanted to, but I'm just going to use it for the single. And again, I'm going to do the same steps. I'm just going to fold this over using my pliers. That one went Oh my word. Yep. It does work, you guys. I promise. I promise it does. And a lot of you seen me do these a million times. It's just, I'm having a day. I'm having a day. It's all right. It's okay. We're keeping it real. Listen, I never claimed to be perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Oh my goodness. Which is actually a good thing because, guys, if you're sitting at home and the sentence enhancers are flying, just listen and know that I'm probably sitting at my desk and the sentence enhancers are flying at my desk too, okay? We're in this together. Good or bad. Wine, no wine. Oh, see, even Janelda, she said the smaller is harder for me to close. It really is. It really is. Eric says, I now call them flying rappies or flappies. The worst part is that there's a cat in this room that is just very excited about all the things that are flying today. Oh my goodness. I know it. A flat nose plier, would it work better? Yeah. So that's you actually have brought up a really good point. So I didn't include a whole lot of other tools in today's show because I already had a lot of things going on. We've got crimp covers, we've got wire guardians, we've got cordons for our leather, plus the leather and the beading wire. So I don't want to overload you guys with information, but listen, when it comes to tools, I really do prefer a flat nose plier, particularly for these wider ones, because it just, for me, it feels like they're a lot easier to use. You can use your standard pliers on all of these, 100%. You might lose one, it might go flying, but otherwise you can do it. But yeah, you're right. The flat nose pliers most definitely works better if you've got those instead. And of course, letting a little bit of glue. That's also a number one kind of trick to this, particularly these little ones. Now, I don't always use glue, but if you take a little bit of glue and you put it right down inside there and you sit this down and walk away for, I don't know, maybe even 5 minutes. That might be a little long, but if you'll let that glue get to tacky stage before you lay your leather on top of it, then when you go to crimp, you don't have to worry that the leather is going to slip slide and things are going to go flying, because that tacky stage of the glue is actually going to hold that leather in place for you, giving you both hands free. So, you know, when you're doing something live, it's a little different. We don't have that kind of time for me to walk away and, you know, but just a little trick for you is tacky stage of glue is 100% going to be your best friend. When it comes to holding things together. Now, I don't think you need the glue necessarily for safety reasons, right? I don't know that the glue necessarily helps overall to hold your piece together, because these are very, very strong. And if you will fold them over and get a really good fold on them with your flat chain nose pliers or your favorite tool, you're going to find that you're not going to need that. But as far as like using an extra set of hands is concerned, a little glue gone to the tacky stage will 100% make a huge difference. All right, guys. Let's turn around. I'm going to stop this before things get any crazier. I was able, this fell over on me 2 times. I was able to push it back without it falling backwards. I will find the findings that have gone flying here in just a minute. It's always an adventure. It's always an adventure. That's why I love you guys so much, though. You guys don't expect me to be 100% perfect every single time. And let me tell you, I won't let you down. I will prove to you time and time again, I am not perfect. I am just like you guys. You guys come and we bead together, right? We bead together. It's just like friends hanging out. So I appreciate you letting me be a part of your Friday afternoon and hanging out with me, even when I send things flying and the set literally falls around or on top of me in this case. Yeah, I appreciate you so much. Yes, the cats will find them for sure. Wanda says, please go out to dinner tonight. Don't do anything in the kitchen. Noted. Wonderful advice. Yes, indeed. All right, guys, I am out of here. I appreciate you so, so much. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I will be here same time, same place next week on Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Please don't forget to set your reminders for Julie's show and Becky's show and Tammy's show. And guys, be ready for the 2024 Art Beads, because it's going to be a fantastic year, and we're going to do so many wonderful things together, even if it's funny, crazy, right? We're going to have a blast, and I'm so glad to be a part of it, and I'm so glad that you are a part of it as well. Have an amazing rest of your afternoon and a great weekend, and I will see you next week. Bye, guys.